Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to walk you through how I build this breadboard and coffee table using some scrap wood that I have in the garage. This was a long build, so I'm going to break it up into several videos. In this video, we're just going to cover the base of the coffee table. Since I don't have a dedicated outfeed table, I had to build one using, guess what? Scrap wood. So I used some 2x4s, put some shims on the bottom of them, then added a piece of plywood on top, bringing it to the level of my table saw. Prior to doing all that, I went ahead and cut the 4x4s I had down to manageable size. So when I run them through the table saw, it'd be easy to manage. I went ahead and cut two sides of the 4x4s. While doing that, my breaker went out because I'm running the table saw and the dust collection system at the same time. And there's only so much outlets that I have in the garage to use. Once I flip the breaker back on, finish cutting that last piece, made some adjustments to the table saw fence, then cut the final two sides. Even cutting all these, as you can see how much dust was produced from this entire thing. And just imagine doing 8 pieces of this. It was some solid work, it was exciting, but it was a lot. Once all 4 sides was cut, I just went ahead and short 3 inches and ran all 4 sides through to make sure they're 3 inches. Once that was done, went ahead and cut the 2x6s, cut the edges off. A lot of this build was somewhat trial and error, so it was a great experience. These 2x4s were used on the top of the X and then on the middle section of the frame. The workshop looks a little bit messy right now in this video, but in future videos you'll see the changes that I have made and how much improvement there is. Once everything was all cut, I cut 4 pieces of the 3x3s down to 16 3/8 and 4 pieces of the 2x3s down to 19 5/8. Those would be for the legs and that X section. I give each piece a sand in. I didn't sand it too much because I didn't want to take off too much of it. Now it's time for assembly. So in the future, if I have to build this project, I have some tips and tricks. For example, this first tip right here, I am just gonna probably use another 3 by 3 and put it on the base there rather than trying to measure up and line up. Which this took a lot of time trying to measure everything nice and neat. However, that's just who I am. Everything had to be somewhat perfect. The top portion of the legs is a different color because I ran out of the Douglas fir that I had. I didn't use any glue in this part of the assembly on this end of the legs. Assembling this was done with pocket holes. So I am right-handed, so trying to do this with my left hand was a little bit hard. So I ended up flipping everything over and then tightening it up. Here's where I cut the small portion of the cross section for the X's. Unfortunately, I didn't record how I cut the big portion, but it was pretty simple. Like cut 45 degrees on one side, then lined it up at the bottom of the X, at the bottom of the frame, and just marked it off. Cut it. I cut it a little bit big just in case. I could always come back and just cut off the little edges. This one was a perfect fit, but for the bottom side, I had to make several passes, which was fine. You could always sneak up on the cut. You better have it too big than too small, then you just wasted that piece. Both legs were built the same way since they're like items. And this is where I had to make that several pass to get to that right dimension. And finally, it was good. Did a dry fit of everything. So I was happy with that. It was time for assembly. So I began assembling without glue, just assembling as is. Pre-drilled holes first to avoid the wood from splitting, because I would hate to build this over again for this table. It's my countersink bit. I sunk in those 4-inch wood screws. 2-inch wood screw, sorry. The assembly for me was the fun part because you're getting to see how everything come together in one. It was so amazing. Oh, hate that I'm using Ryobi and Rigid. I started off with Ryobi years ago. It was on sale, so I bought those. And then I finally found out Rigid was on sale as well. So far they are both great drills. The Rigid I use for the most smaller spaces. And right about here is where I decided I was going to use wood glue. So I took it all apart and then decided to put wood glue in between. Wipe off that excess and squeeze out. And began putting those screws back in. So this coffee table build was not my plan. I will leave the link to those below. However, I recorded it since I used scrap wood and I made some modifications. Voila. So I left the other side in to show you how I joined these small X's to the big X's. So I used some brad nails, and since I didn't have any 4-inch screws to reach from that long portion to the other side, I just used brad nails and tacked it up after I glued it. If you notice that space in the top next to the top clamp, that's because I had some issues cutting this one, and that's the piece you saw me cutting earlier. So I had to cut it several times, and then finally I got it to fit somewhat good in there. To fill up all those loose ends, I just made this mixture of glue and sawdust. Not sure if I like that mixture, but it worked. I'm gonna sprinkle some more sawdust on top of that, then sand it. This is what we have. Now it's time for sanding the bottom. I use these Rockler bench cookies. I saw this from 731 Woodworks. Thank you for that tip. And these work really well. Flipped it over and did the same thing. I sanded this base as even as I can. In the future videos, you'll see how this base was built. But I got to tell you, it was not easy, but I did it. I made it happen. Yeah. So short, I got the sides, all four sides. Once that was done, now it's time for assembly. To assemble the base, the bottom to the legs, I use pocket holes. Here is my router jig that I had on from all the finishes that I had to do this base flat and level. I just left it on and I think I use a 1/4 inch round over bit. Now you see I rounded the short edge and I realized I did it after I did both sides. By then it was too late. Here I just touch up the edges with 220 grit sandpaper and the sanding block. Same thing for the end of the legs, just rounding. For the inner portions, I sanded those by hand using 80 grit sandpaper and then finishing off with the 220 grit sandpaper. I didn't want the router to go crazy on those insides, those X's, and then destroy the whole thing. Assembly time. We're gonna assemble these with the pocket holes that we made earlier. Sorry about my hand getting in the way of the camera there. Somewhat set on there. I used the clamps to hold it in place so it don't move while I was trying to drill it in. Because I rounded off the short side, it made it a little bit harder to put that bottom on to those legs. It was time to do the other side. The other side was done the same way. Only thing the other side was easier because now we have one side on already. Just clamp the both of them together. Man, that looks so good already. Clamp those together to hold it in place. Ensure it was nice and level where I needed it to be. Flipped it up on its side where I can see the screw. And here we have the end result. This piece is for the top middle section to just provide some extra support. And it worked out great when I put the tabletop on. This clamp from Craig Jig is pretty good. That flush clamp made everything flushed on there, and I was able to screw those in without any problems. And this is the end result prior to me painting the bottom of it. And this is the after it was painted. I didn't like this color, so I went ahead and I made it into a more white color as we got towards the end of the entire build. But thanks for watching. Please stay tuned. Like, share, comment, and stay tuned for the next part. Thank you.